Hey everyone, welcome to today's live Q&A. It's great to be here with you today. I have got some very interesting questions for today and some very specific questions, so I will get straight into it. I'm super excited to be here. Number one, I have always struggled with the idea of shame and unworthiness, social shame and shame that exists within families or communities. Do you have some suggestions about how to deal with the feeling of shame, especially when it's linked to childhood woundings? Okay. Shame is a very interesting part of us. It's that part of us that makes us feel that we're not good enough. And so when we have shame around, we can have shame around ourselves, we can have shame around our own feelings, we can have shame around different things that we've basically been, it has been indicated to us that we should be ashamed of or about. So oftentimes shame is actually a construct that comes from other people. So if you were, if you were never ashamed, like if you never had the suggestion in your life that you should be ashamed of yourself, then we would actually be quite shameless people, meaning that we would just behave the way that's right for us, and we wouldn't have the ability or the kind of the capacity to kind of judge ourselves in that way. And like everything, shame is both good and bad. I think there's been one or two times in the last year that I have actually seen shame work for a person. So, when you have a person who's doing something that's not right, sometimes shaming that person for doing that can be helpful. So, for example, I saw in another group, I saw it was a Finnish group, actually, Finnish people in Sydney, I think it was, or Australia. I'm not sure. I can't remember. Anyway, the point was that somebody was, asking about certain neighborhoods and saying, in case it's like really bad neighborhood, in case there's like abos in that neighborhood. And I just, even to say that word is just horrendous. It's like the equivalent of the N word for American, African American people. And it's just, I saw that and I got a physiological reaction to it. I felt like vomiting. And I actually shamed that person into looking at what they're putting out there. So I said to her, I am disgusted by having this here from people. Sorry, I'm just a little bit emotional. It was just so horrendous. I'm disgusted by your comments. How dare you talk about other people like that? What makes you think that you're somehow better just because you're white? And that actually stopped the person in their tracks, because they didn't mean to be disrespectful towards Aboriginal people in Australia. They just didn't actually know any better. They didn't realize they were being racist. They didn't realize their behavior was racist, and so they took it on board because my reaction was that shaming reaction. But it's in situations other than something like that, when people just aren't aware of what they're doing and they need to be aware of it. Shaming somebody is actually not something that usually works, because it doesn't empower you. It takes away from you. So you've struggled with the idea of shame and unworthiness in social shame and shame in families and communities. My question to you is, why, what do you think is so different about you what is so different about you, and what is wrong about that different thing? So it's really difficult. This is a very generalized question, so answering something like this, unless you give me some specifics, is very difficult. So my question to you is, what is different about you that you've been shamed about, and what about that thing were you actually shamed of? What have you learned shame around, your family, your community? And once we have a little bit more information on that, it'll be easier to answer more specifically. Do I have some suggestions on how to deal with the feelings of shame, especially when it's linked to your childhood woundings? Yes. When you're a child, when we're children, our parents do the best they possibly can, but sometimes it's just not good enough, right? We get the issues that we get because of our parents. Now, generally our parents or on other people in a perceived position of power. Now, what will happen is if you heal those parts of you, if you delve into those pain points and you respect them and you allow them to grow into something amazing, you can actually have a very purposeful life because of your woundings, not in spite of them. So your greatest gifts to the world generally lie beneath your deepest wounds that you've ever experienced. So in that way, your purpose is tied, directly into the wounding that you received as a child. So in that way, the wounding that you received as a child is not actually a bad thing. It may seem to you that it's painful, and certainly if you haven't been able to work through those things, yes, it's painful. Yeah, absolutely, it's painful. The horrendous things that happened to me in my life, in my childhood, you may have read about them, you may have seen videos about them, whatever, but of abuse, sexual abuse, narcissistic abuse, alcoholic abuse, violence, those kinds of things. I wouldn't change any one of them, because I wouldn't be who I am right now, and I wouldn't be here doing this work. That fulfills me with some of my greatest joys in my life. So please, if you're having feelings of shame, don't just try to deal with that. See if you can somehow embrace, do almost like an investigative piece on yourself in saying, okay, so I felt ashamed as a child, or I had woundings in my childhood that have since made me feel ashamed. What are the things that I've actually learned, the positive things, that I've learned from that? So did me being ashamed as a child, or did the thing that happened to me as a child that made me feel ashamed, does that make me have a higher level of compassion for other people? Because if it does, that's fantastic. That is just incredible. We need more compassion in the world. So from that space, start looking at the aspect of your shame or aspect of your childhood wounding that has caused you shame, and see what are actually the good things that have come out of it, and how can you start embracing those a little bit more. Because one of the biggest problems that we have as people is that we only focus on the negative side of pain, and we forget that there's this massive power that comes from taking our pain and turning it into something significant. So that would be my challenge to you is, yes, absolutely, kind of go into it, go start investigating yourself a little bit, go into, what was this childhood wound about? Why do I feel ashamed of it? Why am I feeling shame in social or familial situations or communal situations? What is that thing that's different about me? And what has that different thing given me? What strength has it already given me? Is it strength of compassion? Is it certain kind of different ways of dealing with things? Because a lot of the times, actually, our coping mechanisms can become our best ways of getting ahead in life if we take that coping mechanism and turn it into power. So I hope that helps. And just for everyone's benefit, please ask as specific questions as possible so that you give me enough background information so that I can help you with this. I feel like I'm just giving generalized answers that don't actually help you. But if you feel like it's helped you, then please go into the comment section and just say, yes, this really helped me. This gave me a different perspective. And if it doesn't help you, then ask further questions so that we can continue this conversation.